Sattler Files.
And in business, the stock market fell through the floor today.
The stock market report.
Hard to know where
The stock market went through the roof today. No one seems to have predicted this.
With Kevin Johnson.
Welcome to the Sattler Files, Kevin Johnson.
Good morning and nice to be here, or is it good afternoon? I don't know. Let's just call it hello, shall we?
That's fine. We're going to do something a bit different today, Kevin. I've got Tom Tapping with us, and we're going to quiz you a little bit about some things that have been going on recently, particularly as it relates to the budget. But before we do that, what is the market doing?
It's actually down 52 points today. It's just basically retracing some of the strong gains we had on the surprise interest rate cut yesterday. The market rallied up and was up over 100 points.
Yep.
I reckon a lot of that's to do with short covering in the banking sector. There's a lot of people trying to call down the banking sector and worry about bad debts and worry about the housing sector. And then, basically the interest rate cut makes them even more attractive now because you're still getting 6 or 7% by owning a bank share comparing to maybe 2% if you had the money in the bank. So that issue won't go away in the short term.
Yep.
And some of the provisioning was not as bad as perhaps some people might have made out to be. And also there was some prudent, if you like, dividend distribution going on by the likes of ANZ. We had this funny situation yesterday where ANZ Bank actually reduced their dividend, the shares went up, and Westpac increased their dividend, the shares went down.
That kind of makes no sense, does it?
Well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of things from time to time don't make a lot of sense in the stock market. So a lot of it's emotional.
So ANZ certainly stood out in terms of the discussion yesterday, though, didn't they? They didn't pass on the entire cut, the only one of the four. Plus, also, they're talking about sort of a little bit doom and gloom by their standards. I mean, they're down to whatever it was, 2.7 billion or something.
Yeah.
Poor buggers are almost broke, and the reduction in the dividend. So really, they stood out from the other three, didn't they?
They did, yeah. It was, if you like, it was funnily enough, the analysts of the sectors of the banking sector were actually applauding them for the move, and because they're aware of their situation, they're aware of their book, so to speak, which is their book of people that they've lent to, and they're just making a decision to preserve some capital. So, I mean, you can't forget the Australian banking sector is probably one of the most strongly capitalised banking sectors in the world, and they've got a very strong market, and they've got a very tight market. And they're extremely well placed. So I'm not surprised by that. There's a lot of hysteria, as I said a few minutes ago, regarding the banking sector and regarding the real estate sector and all those sorts of issues. So, but you've got to understand the government is doing things about it by the Reserve Bank by cutting interest rates. The government's by bringing out a prudent budget, trying to stimulate small business. These are all things that are all positive for an economy.
Yeah, exactly. And do you think that the budget had much influence on the performance of the market today, Kevin?
No, I don't think so. I think, like I said, it was just a rebound from what was basically an overbought situation yesterday, and also dragged down today by the performance of BHP. I mean, they are a big company, a big part of our index. They're down 8% today. As renewed fears regarding the nothing more than a mudslide, I suppose. It's probably a lot worse than that. But in Brazil, the Samarco issue, and the big numbers being bandied around, like it's $44 billion. We all know about lawyers' ambit claims with respect to everything. You read about them all the time in the US court system. So I wouldn't be thinking they're up for that sort of liability. But either way, they're down 8% today. And the iron ore prices were down a little bit. So as a result of that, Rio, also another big iron ore producer, they're down about 6% as well. So it does affect the market. That's probably what's dragged the index down. As we're talking now, I'm watching ANZ suddenly go up for the day, a couple of cents. Commonwealth Bank are steady, and they were all down a lot more than that earlier in the day. So.
The fallout from the budget, for me, as an observer, as a punter, I thought it was a bit of a nothing budget. It didn't really do a lot for anyone in particular. The threshold difference of 7,000 on income, who cares? The definition of small business reaching $100 million was pretty interesting. And obviously that will have a long-term effect.
Yeah. No, well, I think they're all positive steps. Look, at the end of the day, you don't want the government to be making lots of changes. And this is one of the big issues we've had in this country for a number of years, is there's so many changes that they talk about and they postulate about. So guess what? Everybody doesn't do anything while they're waiting for the government to sort out their issue and kick the political football around. If the government can actually turn around and say, these are the rules, this is what we're dealing with, and then everyone can get on and run their business accordingly. But for the moment, if you're a superannuation retiree or if you're in small business, you'd be wondering all the time, well, should I take that risk to expand my business? Should I take that risk to do this? Because all of a sudden it could be stolen from me. And I think that's the major issue to play. So I think it's a good budget from that point of view. The other issue, which as I said yesterday, every year we go through this whole process, but it doesn't get approved by the Senate. It doesn't become law anyway. So it all becomes just a sideshow for 3 or 4 months. So hopefully on this occasion they can sort that issue out as well.
Well, I think Malcolm's going to try doing that, Kevin, by having a double dissolution and roll the dice and hope they can get a better Senate for him.
Well, you would hope so, yeah. There's certainly room for improvement on that sense. But once again, come back to what I was saying. The important thing, if we can just get a level playing field. Yes. We know where interest rates are. We know where government policy sits. We know who's going to be in power for the next 3 or 4 years. And every time someone does something wrong, they start talking about elections all the time, even if they've only been in power for a year or so.
That's right. They want it all to go away and come back again. We touched on yesterday when we were talking about lithium. Lithium
certainly is a very fashionable sector at the moment.
It really is. And is that likely to be something of a saviour for the resources sector?
I think the gold price and the gold sector is far more of a saviour for the resources sector than the lithium sector will be. The lithium sector is certainly an area of growth, and it's an area that has a modest amount of employment now, and I think it will certainly increase the employment opportunities in this state. And there's no doubt, we've already seen that already. There's 2 plants, one's being refurbished down there at Mount Catlin, and one's being built by Mineral Resources there at Mount Marion. So they're improving. They're actually expanding things and improving things there, but not to the level that there are other projects around being built, like the Nova Bollinger one of Independence's group. That's probably a bigger project, but it is a positive step. Where it comes from, see, stock market's always forward-looking, and always saying is they're looking ahead and going, okay, if you start building as many electrical cars as we expect, EVs as we call them, as you expect, it's going to increase the demand for lithium. Where's the lithium going to come from? Well, fortunately, a lot of the lithium resources in the world reside in WA, and in particular up at that Pilgangoora region, up in the Pilbara. So it will create increased demand for the commodity, so there will be new mines built, and that, of course, is a positive.
Absolutely.
With the superannuation changes, Kevin, obviously that flows through in terms of what people put into superannuation, which then is available for fund managers to purchase shares effectively.
True.
So the impact of what the changes were in the budget to super, how's that likely to pan out?
Well, most of the changes I saw were actually reductions from what you could put in there, but I think it shouldn't affect the stock market because, there's usually as an element, as a general rule, people who have self-managed super funds have a high degree of cash and a modest amount of investment, and the bigger funds, they might allocate somewhere between, say, 30 and 50% to equities, and the rest is in bonds and fixed interest, infrastructure assets and all those international shares and the like. So it's not a big free kick for the stock market as such. The interest rate move yesterday is probably more of a free kick for the stock market than what changes to government policy on superannuation are.
Okay, look, that's gives us a pretty good coverage of what's been going on a particularly busy week with a budget and interest rate cut and everything like that. Yeah. It's been a big week. It's
been very volatile as well. I mean, it was 77, I think, when we spoke on Monday. 75 today. So
is that right?
Moved the gold price up to over $1,700 Aussie again, and we're one of the world's largest producers of gold, and you can't lose sight of how much cash is being generated by these gold companies. We see it all the time. We look at the quarterly reports of Northern Star and Evolution and Regis and Saracen and all these local West Australian companies, and they're all generating a lot of cash at the moment. We look at them and think, we'd love to raise money for them. Well, they don't need any because they're generating a lot of cash. Now, that's a lot of employment, a lot of cash, a lot of drilling, a lot of work. So that is really the thing that's coming through. And also, you can't underestimate this iron ore price too. It is nearly $60 at the moment. So you saw that yesterday with Fortescue repaying some of their debt. That's positive as well because suddenly the risk of Fortescue dissipates dramatically because they're generating so much cash, they pay down their debt and then can start paying dividends and look at other opportunities in this state. So all in all, what's happened the last 3 or 4 months is very good for Western Australia. And then, as always, with all booms and busts, when you eventually hear about it in the newspaper or on the television, it's probably the end of that particular cycle.
It does.
Press the last month or so, how bad it all is. Well, it may have been bad back in January, but I can tell you it's a lot better now.
That's always good news for everyone that's involved. So, good report.
Listen daily to the Sattler file because we find out daily what's going on and not what happened 3 months ago in some government data.
Exactly right. No, very good point. Thanks for the update and the info and the explanation today, Kevin.
No worries, guys. Talk to you tomorrow.
Good on you. Kevin
Bye-bye.
Johnson with the Stock Market Report. And more coming up shortly on the Sattler Files.
And in business, the stock fell through the floor today.
The Stock Market Report.
It's hard to know where
The stock market went through the roof today. No one seems to have predicted this.
With Kevin Johnson. This is the Sattler Files. Sattler